kind, I think that that argument could be subject to debate. The fact that you just glossed over it has particular impacts to it, as opposed to whether or not your intention behind it was you didn't clarify that argument. You, like, for example, Mark apologized for his gendered language in his lecture. He recognized that he did it. That's a different scenario than where he just make that statement and continue on. So yeah, I think it does depend on context, but whether or not to determine intent, I guess, is a difficult question. But I think that if your intent is going to be to not use that type of language, or to at least understand that what you're using is gendered language, for example, then you kind of need to make that clear. A lot of people, for example, if they have mankind in their words, will put the man part of that word under erasure, or they will clarify at the beginning after they read the cite that I do not advocate the gendered language in this argument. If you're going to put things under erasure, which really just means to draw an X to the word, so like if my evidence had ... I would go through and X out like that. That's me putting it under erasure, and I would probably just write up here. And so when I'm highlighting, I would highlight like this, and I would read people kind. Or I would say at the beginning, I don't advocate the gendered language in this statement. I would just probably say and kind, and not even say any of the words. So there's ways around that intent question, and part of when you cut evidence is to either highlight out or not use this type of evidence because of the type of language you use.
I was just wondering, so if someone runs a language critique on you, and then you go up, but it's not on your evidence, it's how you said it, and you go up, you just apologize, say, yeah, I didn't mean it to sound like that.
Apologies usually work depending on the debater. I mean, a lot of people will make arguments about why you need to talk about that apology in your speech. It just depends about who you're debating and how they feel that you should run. I mean, some of the people will not let you get away with apologizing. They're like, yeah, okay, it's good that you apologize, but you still should lose the debate round for these reasons because you used the word. So it just depends on who you're debating. The attack was not understandable in both intent and structure. You understand how that is a different argument when applied to different critiques. So I'm not going to go through every one of these arguments here, but my point is that you should not read generic theory shells when you're answering critiques. Framework arguments are a little bit different, but these are just reason why Ks are bad, and they really don't apply to a lot of arguments, and usually K debaters can do away with these things very quickly. Your time is better spent reading evidence or defending your assumptions, your rhetoric, or your values. So, yeah, same kind of stuff. This critique is absurd. E, F. This critique should not be a voter. Like, come on. These are not arguments. These are not warranted arguments. If you're going to say it's absurd, there better be a warrant, a claim, or a warrant to go with that claim. So remember, do not read these type of things. Slightly better, but still not great framework cards. I would suggest looking into Shively's book. She's a professor of politics at Texas A&M. The book's from 2004. It's called Political Theory and Partisan Politics. She writes about competition and the nature of predictability. And if you like a decent framework file, if you want to read some of the evidence before you go buy the book or rent it, you can go to the National Debate Coaches Association website, click on the Evidence Project, go to the Gonzaga's high school top files from last year, and you can go to the Framework K bad file. And the first few pages of there have the most commonly read Shively cards that talk about why the nature of debate needs to be predictable and how competition is destroyed if we could talk about anything in the world that's not predictable. And so her argument would be, or the application of this argument is that criticisms in general are not predictable arguments. I don't think this is very good because, one, there's no real solid evidence out there that says that predictable education is in fact the best education. In fact, a lot of education that you learn when it's unpredictable is usually the stuff that probably impacts you the most. Just remember, all of these things are debatable. Predictability can be good or bad for education. Limits on education can be good or bad. All of these things have evidentiary support out there, and instead of reading these F theory is, or this K is absurd, B, this theory is not a voting issue, come on. Find some evidence out there and defend all of these claims. There are people out there that write about predictable education, that write about whether or not we should put limits on our thinking and stuff like that, whether or not we should define words, or whether or not we should not define words. All of these things have evidentiary support, and I implore you to use evidence when you're debating the framework of critiques as opposed to using bad theory arguments. Brooks, if I can't make these awful and persuasive arguments for the case, how am I supposed to answer them? Listen to the K. It's really easy. Listen to the thinking behind all of these arguments and respond appropriately. Read them, debate, think. These are not hard things to do. You should not have a gut reaction to these theory arguments. It's not hard normally to figure out what the assumptions are behind critiques. Better answers to case. Be accountable and be able to defend with evidence, which is my key claim here. A lot of people just go in and defend claims without evidence. Your way of thinking, your values, and the rhetoric you choose to use in a public forum. If you're going to defend things like the government, capitalism, the military, exploitation of the environment or natural resources, then you should have evidentiary support for these type of arguments. I don't think these are hard things to defend. I mean, it seems like a majority of the population defends or likes the idea behind some form of government. A lot of people kind of enjoy capitalism. We in America, especially, there are authors out there that think that the military is just sweet and that it's okay to pollute and to take natural resources from the environment. It's okay to kill cows so we can have hamburgers. These things are all practices that are currently used by a majority of the populace. And so it just baffles me that people get so freaked out by people that say that any of these things that are normal are not good or not the way you think they are. So really, just if you're going to defend something in your affirmative, you should probably have an evidentiary defense for it or reasons why they're good. The impact turn is the best way to answer a critique. And it's just saying, if someone runs a capitalism argument, probably turn and say capitalism's good. Someone says government's bad, probably say it's good. It's the easiest way to clash, and it's the easiest way to probably appeal to whoever your judge is, because they'll probably believe, more likely than not, that these things are good things. The second easiest way to answer a critique is to link turn it. If for some reason they're unaware of a sneaky trick that you use, like for example, in the removing terrorist or Cuba from the terrorist list case. Now, sure, we're going to defend things like the government should remove Cuba from the terrorist list. That's a negative action, though. I guarantee you that if I stood up and read just pure like Brez and Foucault against Marx, he would stand up and probably link turn the argument. He's like, yeah, I defend this particular instance of the government to take a group of nations that are being called terrorists off an evil list. There's no reason why that replicates or extends the power of the government. If anything, it's a negative action. There's a way to link turn these arguments. But you better be pretty damn sure that your evidence and that your argument is doing those type of things. So link turns are another possible way to answer critiques, but they're probably a little bit more difficult. Like I said, bar none, the easiest way to answer them is just impact turn. All right, anti-K people in the world resolved. The word resolved proves that the grammar of the resolution is based upon enacting a policy. They justify, or the K debaters justify arbitrarily changing the question of the resolution to an infinite number of potential frameworks and ensuring the negative always wins. I don't know if that has a claim or a warrant for that claim, but whatever. Grammar is the only predictable basis for determining the meaning of the resolution. It's the basis for how words interact together. Ignoring it justifies changing the focus of debate on either side, mooting the resolution altogether, and this definition of resolved proves our argument. In words and phrases in 64. The definition of the word resolved: it is of similar force to the word enact, meaning to establish by law. And so this is a common framework argument that's used by a lot of people that want to defend a policy-only interpretation of the resolution or the way debate should be, and they justify it based off resolve. So you see how this is maybe a little bit more of a complete argument than just saying this K is absurd, this K is not a voter. So this is a better way of going about establishing a framework for the world. And like I said, if you can't get all this down, all of these